6 women, 6 different cities, 6 reputations built on fear, loyalty, and blood. But what connects them isn't how they lived, it's how brutally their stories ended. From nurses fighting to escape gang ties to teenage shooters who became legends on the streets, these 6 endings are darker than anything you'd expect. Stay until the end because the worst story might surprise you. Tyosha Mitchell. Tyosha Mitchell, known to friends and family as Tyosha, was the kind of person who seemed determined to rewrite her story. She worked as a nurse, cared deeply about people, and wanted to build a future far away from the streets that had once shaped her life. But leaving that world behind turned out to be far more dangerous than she could have imagined. Years earlier, Tyosha had been deeply involved with the Madstone Bloods, specifically a faction known as the Vietnam Baby Guerrilla Gang. The group had ties to Norfolk, Virginia, and connections to the larger Black Pea Stone Nation. She wasn't just another member either. At one point, she had risen to become the highest-ranking female in the organization. But by 2023, she was trying to walk away from that life for good. According to court records, leaving the gang wasn't as simple as making a decision and moving on. To earn permission to leave, she reportedly had to endure a brutal beat-out ritual. 3 women continuously assaulted her for 31 seconds. Witnesses later said the attack became so severe that she dropped into a fetal position on the ground. Instead of ending there, a man allegedly forced her back to her feet so the beating could continue. The violence didn't stop that day. After returning to her Richmond apartment, Tyosha was reportedly visited by 3 women and 2 men. One carried a gun while another wore a mask. They pounded on her door, and once inside, investigators say they attacked her again. A witness later told police they believe jealousy involving a romantic relationship may have fueled the assault. From there, the situation took an even darker turn. Authorities believe the group forced Tyosha into a black Hyundai Sonata and drove her to a secluded area in York County. Once they arrived, she was ordered out of the vehicle. There, prosecutors say she was shot at least 8 times, suffering wounds to her head, back, abdomen, legs, and other parts of her body. Around 3:47 that morning, nearby residents reported hearing gunfire. Just a few hours later, a jogger discovered a body hidden roughly 10 feet off the roadway in a wooded area and immediately called police. 25-year-old Tyosha Mitchell was pronounced dead at the scene. Investigators recovered 14 shell casings nearby, painting a grim picture of what had happened. As detectives began piecing together the case, strange details started piling up. Inside Tyosha's apartment, the floors appeared freshly mopped. Outside, investigators found forensic gloves discarded near the building, while a blanket hung from a second-story window. It looked like someone had gone to great lengths to erase evidence. Then came the breakthrough. Text messages recovered from Tyosha's phone revealed connections between several suspects and the Vietnam Baby Guerrilla Gang. Those messages also pointed to Hezekiah Carney, known as HK, as a leader within the group. The investigation soon zeroed in on the black Hyundai Sonata. One burnt-out passenger side taillight made the vehicle easy to track. Surveillance cameras captured it 11 times during the critical hours surrounding the murder. The car appeared repeatedly near Tyosha's apartment, before later showing up in Newport News and then near the location where her body was eventually found. Just minutes before, witnesses heard gunshots. Cameras placed the vehicle less than a mile from the crime scene. When police eventually stopped the Sonata, they found more evidence inside, including cell phones, a black mask, and a 9mm bullet. Investigators later determined the bullet matched the same make and model as shell casings recovered at the murder scene. Phone records only strengthened the case. Data placed several suspects near Tyosha's apartment and near the location of her murder. Investigators also discovered extensive communication between the accused before and after the crime. Authorities ultimately charged Jamaica Langley, Acacia Jackson, Hezekiah Carney, and Jaquan Jones in connection with Tyosha's death. In August 2024, the case finally reached its conclusion when the defendants entered guilty pleas. Carney and Jones each received 38-year prison sentences for their roles in the abduction and murder. Langley was sentenced to 20 years, while another co-defendant received 35 years, Gakira Barnes. Back in 2010, Gakira Barnes was just a young girl trying to find her place in the world. When she started attending a charter school on Chicago's South Side as an 8th grader, nobody around her could have imagined the reputation she would later gain on the streets. During her first month at the school, she picked up a suspension for being disrespectful, but that was hardly enough to make her stand out. School administrators remembered her as quiet and somewhat shy. She wasn't known for fighting or causing major problems. In fact, when she walked out of math class, it usually wasn't because she wanted trouble. She simply struggled with the material and went looking for someone who could help her understand it. As the school year went on, she slowly came out of her shell. She started making friends, smiling more, and seeming more comfortable around people. Those who worked with her believed she still had a real chance at building a different future. They wanted her focused on education, college, and opportunities beyond the streets. But somewhere along the way, things changed. When Gakira returned for her freshman year, her attendance became inconsistent. Before long, she found herself caught up in the juvenile justice system and eventually dropped out altogether. Years later, when former school staff learned about the life she had allegedly become involved in, many struggled to believe it. The quiet girl they remembered didn't match the image that was now being described in news reports. In 2011, Gakira faced a charge related to discharging a firearm. Her mother later maintained that police never actually recovered a weapon, and the case eventually fell apart after witnesses changed their stories. A judge temporarily placed her in an alternative school inside Cook County's Juvenile Detention Center, hoping to keep her safe and away from the violence-consuming parts of Chicago. Although she was ultimately found not guilty, her connection to the streets only seemed to grow stronger afterward. According to her mother, Gakira was intelligent, sharp, and well-spoken, but school no longer held her attention. Instead, she spent more and more time outside, where she became known by the nickname K.I., a shortened version of her first name. She began running with gang members in an area known as Tukaville, named after Shondale Tuka Gregory, a teenager whose murder had already become a symbol in Chicago's ongoing gang wars. As violence continued to erupt between rival factions, Gakira found herself pulled deeper into the conflict. Police later suspected that she may have been involved in several shootings, including at least one homicide. One theory even suggested that she was responsible for the killing of rival gang member O.D. Perry when she was only 14 years old. Despite the rumors and suspicions, investigators never gathered enough evidence to charge her. Witnesses refused to cooperate, and physical evidence never connected her to the crimes. Still, her reputation on the streets continued to grow. After one of her close friends, 13-year-old Taekwon Tyler, was killed in 2012, many believed the loss changed her completely. Police said she became obsessed with retaliation and revenge. She even adopted social media names that reflected her loyalty to fallen friends and her growing status within the gang conflict. Online, she projected fearlessness. Her Twitter posts regularly targeted rivals, celebrated fallen friends, and warned enemies. Behind that tough image, though, there were signs that she understood the danger surrounding her. Some of her final messages hinted that she knew people were actively hunting her and that death was becoming a real possibility. In early 2014, community leaders and police officers actually tried to intervene. While conducting outreach in one of Chicago's most dangerous areas, they spotted Gakira standing near enemy territory. Recognizing the danger she was in, they approached her and offered resources and opportunities that might help her leave the streets behind. She declined and walked away. Less than 2 months later, on April 11, 2014, that danger finally caught up with her. A gunman wearing a hood opened fire near a home on South Eberhard Avenue. Gakira was struck 7 times. 2 other young men were wounded during the shooting, but investigators quickly concluded that she had been the intended target. She died at just 17 years old. Magnolia Shorty, born Renetta Yamika Lowe Bridgewater, Magnolia Shorty came up in the Magnolia Projects of New Orleans, a place that shaped both her identity and her music. Even as a young girl, people around her could see she had something special. She carried a natural charisma and talent that made it seem like she was destined to rise above the struggles that surrounded her. And eventually, she did. Years later, she would appear on the remix of Jada Kissa's Smoking Gun and be featured on Courtney Hart's My Boy. But long before those opportunities came along, Magnolia Shorty had already earned respect in New Orleans' legendary bounce music scene. Her breakthrough came in 1997 with the release of her debut project, Monkey on Thadasic. The album was surprisingly short, consisting of just 5 tracks and an introduction from Manny Fresh. Despite its size, it left a lasting mark on the culture. In fact, it would end up being the only official album she ever released during her lifetime. What really stood out was the title track, which quickly became a bounce music classic and helped establish her as one of the city's most recognizable voices. Much of that success was fueled by the energy she brought into the studio. Manny Fresh later recalled that she recorded the song in a single take. From the moment she walked into the room, she carried herself like somebody who already knew she had a hit on her hands. She even brought her cheerleading squad with her, creating an atmosphere that made everyone feel like something special was happening. The confidence was contagious, and the record reflected it. The song itself wasn't packed with complicated lyrics. Instead, it thrived on infectious hooks and raw energy, all layered over the distinctive early Cash Money sound that was helping separate the label from everybody else in the South. Magnolia Shorty's rise began after she caught the attention of Birdman, who discovered her talent and brought her into the Cash Money family. Over the years, she developed a close relationship with the label, especially with Birdman, whom she viewed as a father figure. Another major influence in her life was Soulja Slim. Back when he was still known as Magnolia Slim, he became one of her mentors and eventually gave her the nickname Magnolia Shorty, a nod to the fact that both artists had grown up in the Magnolia Projects. After signing with Cash Money, she became one of the label's earliest female stars, alongside Miss T. From there, she worked closely with artists like BG and Juvenile, appearing on records that celebrated both her city and her neighborhood. Songs like Magnolia Shorty and Juvenile's Third Ward Soldier helped cement her place within New Orleans hip-hop culture and made her a respected figure in the local scene. As the years passed, her influence only grew stronger. In 2009, she performed at the SXSW Music Festival and later earned the award for Best Bounce Song at the Underground Hip Hop Awards in New Orleans. Having been affiliated with the Cash Money movement since the early days, She remained deeply connected to the label's legacy. By 2010, she was actively recording new music and working toward a long-awaited second album under the Cash Money and Young Money banner. Then came December 20th, 2010. Magnolia was preparing to travel to Miami for an upcoming bounce music festival and had stopped by her apartment complex to grab a few things before leaving town. It should have been a routine stop. Instead, it became the final moments of her life. As she entered the gated Georgetown apartments in New Orleans East, another vehicle slipped through the gate behind her. The car maneuvered into position and blocked her path. Within seconds, two armed men jumped out and opened fire directly into her vehicle. The attack was swift, calculated, and relentless. Magnolia was struck 26 times. Sitting beside her was Jerome Hampton, who was also caught in the barrage of gunfire. Both were killed inside the vehicle in what investigators described as a targeted double homicide. Tara Correa McMullen. Tara Correa McMullen's story didn't start in Los Angeles. She spent her early years on the East Coast before moving to Northern California with her mother and sister in 1996. A few years later, Tara and her mother decided to head south to Los Angeles, chasing the same thing countless families come to the city looking for: a better life and a fresh start. Those first years weren't easy. The family bounced between budget hotels while trying to get on their feet. Despite the instability, Tara enrolled in a local high school where she formed a close friendship with a classmate named Morris Tipton. Around that same time, she was also beginning to talk seriously about her dream of becoming an actress. Then, almost out of nowhere, an opportunity landed in her lap. Tara's mother happened to work at a casting agency, and one day she overheard casting directors struggling to find the right girl for a role in an upcoming Martin Lawrence movie. Seeing an opportunity, she suggested her youngest daughter. The remarkable part was that Tara had never acted before. She had no professional experience, no resume, and no formal training. Still, something about her stood out. The director saw potential and gave her a chance. The gamble paid off. Tara landed the role of the only girl on an otherwise all-boys basketball team, making her feature film debut. After the movie was released that summer, her career gained momentum almost immediately when she secured a recurring role on the popular television series Judging Amy. At the same time, things seemed to be improving at home. Her mother finally managed to rent an apartment, giving Tara something she hadn't really had before: a place to call home and a bedroom of her own. But Los Angeles can be deceiving. Some neighborhoods seem perfectly normal when the sun is out. Kids play outside, people walk the streets, and everything appears peaceful. Then night falls, and an entirely different reality reveals itself. The neighborhood Tara moved into was heavily affected by gang activity, and the dangers lurking beneath the surface would soon become impossible to ignore. Tara adapted quickly to her surroundings. She picked up the local slang, the way people talked, and the rhythm of life around her with the same natural ability that made her such a convincing actress. Her performances on Judging Amy impressed producers so much that writers continued expanding her role. On the show, she portrayed Graciela Reyes, a troubled and hardened teenager who had been abandoned by much of her family. Throughout the storyline, Judge Amy, played by Amy Brenneman, fought tirelessly to help the young girl turn her life around. But Graciela's story became increasingly tragic as she got caught up in gang violence, faced adult criminal charges, and was ultimately murdered while incarcerated. What made the role so haunting in hindsight was how closely parts of it began to mirror Tara's real life. About halfway through her run on the show, people around her started noticing changes. Her talent agency later said she was becoming increasingly unreliable. It reached a point where agency staff often had to personally pick her up and drive her to work just to make sure she arrived on set. Her friend Maurice noticed the shift as well. The girl who had once seemed focused on acting was now spending more and more time around the same kinds of people she portrayed on television. The line between the world she acted in and the world she lived in appeared to be getting thinner. Then came the discovery that terrified her mother. At just 15 years old, Tyra had become involved with a man who was 10 years older than her, a known gang member with a criminal record and time behind bars. Her mother desperately tried to pull her away from that influence and reportedly hoped law enforcement would find a reason to lock him up before he could drag her daughter any deeper into that world. According to family attorney Gloria Allred, Tyra herself was never considered a gang member. Instead, she appeared to be a teenager who believed she could help or save someone caught up in that lifestyle. Unfortunately, good intentions are often no match for the realities of the streets. As time went on, the warning signs continued to pile up. Not long after her run on Judge and Amy ended, her talent agency dropped her altogether. The promising young actress, who had seemed destined for bigger opportunities, suddenly found herself drifting further away from Hollywood and closer to danger. Then the worst-case scenario became reality. Just a few months after her final episode aired, Tyra was spending time with her boyfriend at an apartment complex on an evening that seemed completely ordinary. Without warning, gunfire erupted. Police later described it as a gang-related walk-up shooting. 3 people were struck as bullets tore through the area. Tyra was hit 5 times. Paramedics rushed her to the hospital where doctors fought to save her life. Despite their efforts, she died less than 3 hours later. She was only 16 years old, Moesha Malta Dean. At just 23 years old, Moesha Malta Dean had already made a name for herself in Philadelphia's underworld, and not in a way most people would ever want. Born in St. Catherine, Jamaica, she eventually moved to the United States, but instead of building a different path, she quickly found herself pulled into the streets. Before long, she linked up with Kenroy Thomas, the leader of a crew connected to Jamaica's feared One Order gang. From there, Moshe's involvement only grew deeper. She wasn't somebody standing on the sidelines or simply associated with the crew by name. According to investigators, she played an active role in the gang's operations, helping organize and carry out violent missions that strengthened the group's influence. As her reputation grew, her name started carrying real weight in the streets. Authorities later obtained surveillance footage that allegedly showed her behind the wheel of a getaway car following a shooting, giving a glimpse into just how involved she had become. At the time, her crew wasn't just dealing with isolated neighborhood disputes. They were locked in a brutal battle for control of Philadelphia's drug trade, a conflict that left a trail of bloodshed across the city. Investigators said the group was linked to the deaths of at least 11 rival gang members as they fought to cement their dominance. The operation stretched far beyond Philadelphia. Prosecutors alleged that a significant portion of the money generated from the drug trade was sent back to Jamaica, where it was used to support and fund additional gang activity. For years, law enforcement kept a close eye on Moshe. Detectives believed she was deeply connected to the organization, but proving it in court was another story. Time after time, investigators came up short on the evidence needed to put her behind bars. But life in that world rarely ends peacefully, and Moshe's story was no exception. Her downfall unfolded during one of the most violent periods of gang warfare the city had seen. Investigators believe rival gang members were looking to settle scores, and eventually they got their chance. Late one night, around 11:30 p.m. in Philadelphia's Germantown neighborhood, a group of people stood gathered on a street corner, unaware of what was about to happen. Surveillance cameras captured the chilling scene. A white van suddenly pulled up, and within moments, 6 armed men jumped out. Then the gunfire erupted. The shooters unleashed a barrage of bullets, turning the corner into chaos in a matter of seconds. Nearly 87 rounds were fired before it was over. By the time the shooting stopped and the smoke cleared, several people had been struck, including Moesha. She had been hit 11 times, suffering multiple gunshot wounds to her chest and torso. Emergency responders rushed her to the hospital, where doctors fought to save her life, but the injuries were simply too severe, and she died later that night. News of her death traveled quickly, reaching not only the streets of Philadelphia, but also her hometown in Jamaica. For many, it was a tragic ending to the story of a young woman whose life had been consumed by violence long before she ever had the chance to truly grow into adulthood. As one observer reflected afterward, they struggled to understand how someone so young had ended up on such a destructive path, describing her not as a hardened woman, but as a young girl whose life was cut short after choosing a world that ultimately gave nothing back. Shanice Dyer. In the fall of 2019, a tragedy unfolded in Los Angeles that left multiple families shattered and sparked a debate that would continue for years. At the center of it all was Shanice Dyer, known on the streets as Infant China, a teenage gang member whose actions would forever change the lives of several innocent people. The victims that day were Jose Flores and Alfredo Carrera. Neither of them had anything to do with gang politics, street beefs, or criminal activity. They were simply attending a baby shower. Jose, a brilliant astrophysics PhD candidate at UC Irvine, had recently landed what many would consider a dream opportunity with NASA. Alfredo was preparing for one of the happiest moments of his life as he got ready to welcome a new child into the world. What should have been a joyful celebration turned into a nightmare. According to prosecutors, the violence stemmed from gang retaliation. A day earlier, a member of the East Coast Crips had been killed by a rival Florencia 13 gang member. Afterward, younger gang members were allegedly encouraged to go out and retaliate. Authorities say Dyer, along with a juvenile named Damian Ellis and another gang associate, Jonathan Charles Johnson, got into a blue Nissan Maxima and headed into territory associated with Florencia 13. Once there, prosecutors argued that the group began firing indiscriminately at people in the neighborhood. Flores and Carrera just happened to be in the wrong place at the wrong time. While unloading gifts from a vehicle for the baby shower, both men were struck by gunfire and killed. The violence did not end there. As the group continued driving through the area, they allegedly targeted another victim, Joel Rosas. In a moment of incredible courage, Rosas used his own body to shield his infant daughter when bullets started flying. He was shot in the back but survived the attack, while his daughter escaped unharmed. At just 17 years old, Dyer was accused of participating in a double murder that shocked the community. Investigators believe the evidence against her was overwhelming. Court records later revealed that she allegedly admitted involvement through text messages and social media activity. Prosecutors also linked the murder weapon to her, and authorities argued the attack was carried out to benefit her gang. Because of the severity of the crime and her age being close to adulthood, prosecutors initially sought to have Dyer tried as an adult. Then everything changed. The COVID-19 pandemic slowed court proceedings, and during that period, a new Los Angeles County District Attorney, George Gascon, took office. One of his earliest policy changes eliminated the practice of seeking adult prosecution for juveniles. As a result, the effort to try Dyer as an adult was withdrawn. For the families of Flores and Carrera, the decision was devastating. They believed the punishment no longer reflected the seriousness of the crime. Attorneys representing the victims' families fought the decision through appeals and legal challenges, but the policy remained in place. Because Dyer remained in the juvenile justice system, she ultimately spent only a few years in custody before being released. Reports later indicated that she was returned to juvenile detention more than once after violating conditions tied to her release. Then came another troubling development. In June 2024, authorities accused Dyer of being involved in another gang-related homicide. This time, prosecutors alleged she assisted two fellow East Coast Crip members in the killing of 21-year-old Joshua Streeter, who was fatally shot in a parking lot at a swap meet in Pomona. The new allegations immediately reignited criticism from those who believed Dyer should never have been released. Supporters of that view argued that a dangerous offender had been given another opportunity to harm the community,